Good afternoon. It's a hearty sign to see a grouping of academic excellence. And to follow up a talk by Satyajit and Shalil, who had stressed what happens in the policy making section and how it affects the people who are aspiring to come to the industry. I have a background which has gone through this for over 32 years. So if I have to capture all the 32 years and then come to present day, I will have to use Charles Dickens' famous quote on Tale of Two Cities. It is the best of times, it is also the worst of times. Now what's the best of times and what's the worst of times? We'll have a look at it. This is my path. I was 2 years senior to Sri here in IIT Madras, a gold medalist from IIT Madras, 1980 batch. Remember, the computer had not come. Okay. The IBM 360 system used to be 20 megabyte, not even megabyte, I think it was some kilobytes, a huge room, about half the size, and we had to do punching cards and write out programs. And the best program we wrote was, we'll write an overnight program to generate paper, and morning we'll use those papers to attend to class. So this was the pastime because most of us were doing hand calculations faster than what the computers can do. That was the case. Second, we didn't have Professor Google. There was nothing called online. So what you get is what you can read. What you can talk is what you assimilated. And what you can do is what you talked. This was the situation. It was really a different world. And I have traveled through this for 32 years. And today, I am most of the time competing with many of you young people, because I am still working in the field of technology, apart from being an intellectual property right practitioner. If you look at this experience, what is today baffling you as what are the career opportunities for a biotech guy was indeed presented to me in 1980. Imagine a situation where I am directly selected by Narayan Murthy to come into Infosys, second guy, and nobody advises me that take it. So we decide, Hey Baba is working in some room somewhere in Jayanagar, let's not take a chance, let's get to the industry. What do you know about the industry? Close to nothing. Okay. And I was one of the conscious people who took decisions that we will live in this country, work here, and see what we can do at best here. So I didn't move out of India, although I worked globally. So this was the focal point that day, 1980. So everything was driven by chance. There's nobody who's asking you or even telling you anything. You can't ask anybody a question because there's not going to be no answer at all for this. The professors who are going to guide you are not people from the industry. They have no clue of what's happening. This is a scenario. So uncertainty is part of people like me who have come today to this place. We have managed uncertainty and worked through it without cribbing about it. And that's the first essential point when you come to a point where you are taking a career day. Don't expect too much to happen. Most probably, nothing may happen. You may end up in a job, 20 years later you may realize that you are doing something that you were not even part of the original group. It doesn't matter, you will still succeed. The essential point here is that the will to succeed overcomes all basic knowledge, because the will to succeed will automatically pull in knowledge. I have never been through doctorates, because if you pass out in 1990 and you want to do some doctorate, we already had a 5-year course at that time. Masters was no chance because we had already covered the master's subjects. So if you want to go, you have to leave this country, and most probably a postdoc, a doc there will end up in the academic sections, which people like me in the engineering group never want to do. And engineers never usually did any of these things. This was the scenario. It's not much different today, except that you are in a completely different field where you can get hold of a high-class academic degree. Now look at it like this. I was the first Indian to grow a silicon crystal in India as part of a silicon project, and we were participating it in the 1980s. Nobody in India talked about silicon there. We were growing this near Bangalore. Now the question would be asked, what happened to that? The famous statement that the government of India used to make, continues to make today, is that we missed the silicon revolution. The reason for that happened was I've been personally through it in experience. It was a situation where the policy makers were not interested in a vision. So they did not think that working with silicon could lead the world to a different point in time and point in place. And for about 15 years we had the same policy. And so many of us exited the silicon talk that day. I think some of the people who headed those panels still continue to be here, but we had missed the bus. The biotech industry in India is exactly at the same crossroads. It's not only you are at the crossroads. The biotech industry is also at the same crossroads. But it is the best of time because the policy makers have completely changed. I think Satyajit would have made it amply clear. The policy maker is now understanding the problem totally. And you want resources, it's available. Otherwise, you won't be sitting in this campus today where about 500 crores. Is that right? About 500 crores has been put in here, and the government of India is not looking at any immediate tangible results. He knows it, and I know it. What the government of India is trying to do now in biotech is what they completely missed to do with the Silicon Revolution. Because at the Silicon Revolution stage in the 1980s, remember the CMOS transistor had not even come. So if you had stuck to it, like what Taiwan did, you would have been a leader in silicon today. Unfortunately, the so-called the Kundli of India was not suitable for that. Okay. So we'll assume that the bio-revolution will overcome this. The second, having got out from that silicon revolution, we knew what not to do, but we had enough knowledge because we had an academic training which was very sound. So I moved on to other areas, and about in the year 2005, biology was slowly starting to blossom in India. So I moved from silicon and manufacturing of semiconductors. I'm an expert in chip design, and I continue to work on those algorithms as well today. I moved into this area of computational systems biology. So you see, it's a totally different field. And what is common between computational systems biology and engineering is simply the maths that go into it. Most computational system biologists practitioners are essentially mathematicians in the basic training, and I was one of them because of the basic grounding I had in engineering from IIT Madras. So I took to it, and then Professor Google had come by then, fortunately. So I didn't need to go to an institute to learn biology, but taught myself biology to a reasonable extent that I can today maintain a conversation with a biologist, a drug research guy, a guy who works with microbes, a guy who works with fuel generation systems, and continue to work with the computational algorithms which can make deterministic solutions out of probabilistic occurrences. We call that a stochastic probability. So those are the areas I worked in. So I came up with a tool called ICFIS, which was predicting large cellular behavior to the extent we understand cellular behavior by kinetics, and that tool is today used by a company called Cellworks. I think many people will know about Cellworks. It's the world leader in computational biology on prediction. So they work with these type of predictive systems, and that tool solves about 100,000 equations simultaneously, differential equations. That's I put together the tool. And I've also promoted Bugworks, which is basically working with the same type of predictive ability with microbes, because the current problem in the drug industry is twofold. One, you're looking at dangerous diseases like oncology problems or rheumatic arthritis problem, and the totally different problem is how to handle antibiotics and bacterial infections. And there have been no inventions of newer antibiotics possibly in the last 25 years. And many of the antibiotics today are resistant. So that's the situation here. Then moving through these three areas, I made a big career change decision that it is impossible for you to continue to work in technologies unless your focus shifts to intellectual property. Now, this is a hard truth. India moved into the intellectual property regime in 2005 because they signed the TRIPS agreement and WTO practices, which means that what is treated as property, intellectual property elsewhere in the world, needs to be treated by you as intellectual property too, and protected almost in similar fashion. The word almost is added here. I think no artist will know what that almost could mean. So that's the situation here. So anybody who does not understand intellectual property now is in a problem, because the whole world has completely moved to an economics based only on intellectual property. Unfortunately, it is biased. I wouldn't be wrong in stating that the mantra which drives entire world commerce is only economics and monetization. If any one of you gets a job in any company, it's not because he's doing a good turn, but because your presence there can drive the engine of economics and monetization. That is the one single agenda on which industry works. Would you agree here or not? This is the raw truth. Okay? There is never anything called a good turn. If you're suitable to work within this engine of economics and monetization, you are in the game. Else, you are out of it. This is the situation. Now, how is it getting driven? Look at it. If you remove knowledge from this equation, none of this economics and monetization will work. The days of aid from Western nations to developing nations is disappearing. Western nations themselves are now leveraging the developing nations for growth. The resources of the world are shrinking. There is no more a chance for you to say that I'll put any amount of petrol into my car and drive, even if it guzzles fuel. The biggest spenders of this world, the United States citizen, is still thinking now, is he spending correctly? So knowledge has now taken over, and anybody who is in this knowledge business has a big part to play in the economics and the monetization policy. And the economics by monetization policy is driven by whom? It's the regulating governments which will take the decisions. And fortunately, we have now better thinkers running these policies, and so we hope that better times will come. So you are in good times. Now look at it. Knowledge by itself is not useful for economics and monetization. If I simply say that I knew S is equal to ut plus half at square in the Newton's equations, it's not enough. I need to see what can be done using this knowledge and save or create solutions to these world problems. So the catchword is mantra. The mantra is innovation. Anything which is not innovative doesn't see daylight. This is another hard truth that you have to see. So if you are continuing to be a hardcore scientific worker, somewhere along the career, you need to innovate. You may start practicing imitation, but you can imitate first, but then you have to innovate invariably. If you don't innovate, you are going to see the end of the day. This is the situation on that. Now, what is tying up all these three together? That is the crucial issue. And the only thing that ties up this together is intellectual property and its regulations, because all these three aspects have now become global. You cannot say anymore that the Indian rupee will be Indian rupee and the American dollar will be American dollar. No, it's gone. If the American dollar to the Indian rupee trade moves to 60 from 59, you are in a different situation the next day morning. So economics and monetization are no more geographically bound. First, understood. Knowledge is no more geographically bound. What you can know or what you can access is the same thing as what can be accessed by anybody in the developed world. That's also the truth. Innovation, all the world has agreed on simple innovative strategies, and they have to be protected by intellectual property, and there are no two questions on this. The intellectual property control or regulatory mechanisms have to be universal. There are some individual differences that are happening today, but it is expected that the world trade business will resolve all these differences and come to some universal policy on which an innovative patent or an intellectual property will be managed, whether it's in the US or in the Europe, EP or in India. This is going to happen. To that extent, there are some differences now which will get ultimately resolved. Now, this is the only thing that you have to understand now to make a career choice. I wouldn't believe there is anything beyond this at all. If you remove IPR from this, you will find that the global order will collapse. Now, what are the biotech opportunities? If you look at it carefully, in India, the total business now is 4.5 million. It was put in the morning today. It is health, fuel, food, and environment. There are, all of you have in some way or the other seen people working around you in all of these areas. And what does the government of India want? It wants to kick this to 100 million. So you see the growth that we are looking at in about 10 years is 25 times. And such growth cannot be driven only by services sectors. It has to be driven by innovation. If you don't innovate, there is no chance for you to hit the 100 billion mark. You won't be anybody worth playing in this world. Now, as a supporting measure, we have seen that research funding is starting to factor in this type of growth already. So you had 1,300 crore funding number that was present by Shalil, and then you have the Indian government of India having a lot of these big grants and the BIPP grants. A lot of this is happening, and funds are available for you to use. Now the question is, you are part of this, you are talented, no questions. The highest levels of academics, no questions. Now, but you have to understand that you have to play in a globally level field. If you are doing something, you are going to do what is going to be contested by somebody else in the world. The only advantage now is that you have great support from the government, the DBTs, the government of Karnataka's ITBT policies, and all supporting innovation. But how are you going to assess the value that you are going to begin? You have got financial risks involved as when you get into projects. You need visibility to the market and access, and all this can be solved in your career only if you get hold of a mentor. I think this point was stressed by the speakers prior to me. If you don't have a mentor in this business of getting into a career, you are at a loss. The same old Indian theory that you need a guru to take you is valid even today. If you don't have a mentor, you are at a loss. So the mentor will take you through the access to everything that you are looking for. So the first thing that you have to do if you are going to look for a career is get hold of a mentor. The mentor will guide you through. You may or may not know so many things in your own field of work, but a mentor is the minimum requirement you need to have. Once you get hold of a mentor, you have it. And the bottom line in all this we talk now is that bio ecosystem is IP centric. You cannot talk beyond that. So what are the options now? You can join the industry at some level, make incremental contributions, but most probably you will not make the 25 times contribution to what the government of India wants. You can be in research and entrepreneurial mode. The mode is IP centric. You have a penchant for working with new methods. Here you have a chance. All you have to do today in the current situation is you have to locate a suitable mentor, discuss the proposals with the mentor, think of a startup company, very much like what Edil had done. Think of that. Then you can tap into the ignition grants of the government. This was very clear now. The approval seal is being held by him at the back, ready to put, provided you have got a proper thing. This is what the situation today is in Delhi. It's the best of times. I have not seen any better time in these 32 years I have been in the industry. It's the best chance. It is research centric, more funding is available, you have key advantages, you have well equipped labs, you have the CCAM facility here is available for anybody to use at a price, and you can factor that into a grant. You have got incubating centers which are coming up, at least in Bangalore, which is talking about high velocity accelerators, the translational accelerators, all of these are incubating mechanisms. The incubating mechanisms are totally giving you the mentor, the resource access, and the ideas for commercialization. If you capture this, you have a contribution possible to the 25 times growth that the DBT is looking for. But it's IP which makes the difference. The first come, first served is valuable there. You have to look at your problem solution space. Now, is there a problem minus a solution? You are in business. This is where the IP-centric stuff works. And the cardinal principle of working with IP is, don't worry about pioneering patents like the laser or anything. Look for knowledge which will drive you towards foundation patents. They are essentially problem solution patents. There is a problem, nobody has a solution, you got a solution, there you have a company which will support you. Then you are in business. This is this total situation. I don't need to worry about it. I taken an example of a typical patent which was granted in 2013, and how within about 6 months this patent has driven the inventors through to the industry, all because he was looking at a problem of modifying lignin. Came up with a solution, and then the industry hooked onto it. So there is value for knowledge, provided you speak the IP mantra, understand what it is. And one of the things that I know is that this IP story is not well understood by many people, because Indian science has talked about IP only from 2005. We have signed the agreements. Now there is point of no return. Understand this, and you will solve your career problem. Okay, so there are 3 issues here. If you take an IP, there are 3 areas of operations for you. You can be the inventor, or you can be part of the regulating group which is trying to build policies around it, or you can be in the industry who will potentially use it. So you see, where does the whole polarization give you maximum benefit? If you are the inventor, the policy will follow, the industry will follow you. So look for an opportunity where you can leverage your knowledge into an invention. There are only 4,000 ducks who come out in India per year, okay, and half of them leave the country. So you have a very, very nominal field. I am very sure, I think Satyajit can answer my question. I believe that DBT does not find year on year enough people to take the grants. Is that true? Yes, you see that? So there is no question of saying the government of India is not willing. They are willing with money. The only question is we are not going with a proposal which can take that chopper. So go there. It is there. And if somebody at your level cannot form an ignition, you are not going to ignite after another 20 years. This is the chance. Hook onto it. Be IP-centric. Tap into the governmental funds which is available. The industry will always welcome you. I think I will end my talk with you, and maybe you can ask me a question. It's all about IP.
How important is it to get into an IP career? There are a lot of these IP jobs which learn on the job as opposed to doing courses, because these are all courses which we have to do later, correspondence and so on.
Let me be very clear on that. I think that is all not needed at all. Okay, the IP job is meant basically for the man of science. First principles. Okay. If you look into this patent I was explaining to you, you will find that every word in that patent is actually written by a man of science. Okay, and it is not talking about any abstract thing. It is only talking of a logical flow where you describe a set of job tasks that you did in your lab, and then concluded it by a set of claims which you say that these claims are my intelligence property. This is what it is. Intellectual property. This is all that you are saying. Now, to do this, you don't need to do a course, because the entire Patent Act of 1970 that has been modified in India is only 100 sections. It is not like the Constitution of India, which is a huge book and the largest in the world. There are only 100 sections, and of which only about 20 sections are of importance, and that 20 sections you will know in one afternoon read. Okay, I prosecute patents. It didn't take me more than 4 days to understand the Patent Act if you knew science correctly, right? So there's no problem. Then you don't need to be an attorney to practice intellectual property rights. All you need to know is a patent agent status. Now the patent agent exam is like these UPSC exams and all that. It's held once in every year, and only somebody from a background of science or an advocate by law can write it. And the questions there will be completely related to science and your analytical ability of understanding from a description what is the inventive step there. It's a simple thing. Anybody who has gone through your academics can solve that in a whiff. That's not an issue. And approximately those jobs, which that number 60,000 which was put up by Shalil, is approximately the remuneration you get on an entry job as a patent examiner in the patent office. There are 4 patent offices in India. One is in Chennai, Delhi, Calcutta, and it is not job. Then you come to the other side. Patent writing is a skill. You need to understand and write good English and understand this. As an example, I have interviewed over 100 candidates last year to recruit patent drafters, and there was not a single candidate who could clear the thing because they could not write well. The habit of writing has been lost, and that is something that you have to recover and then be part of this industry. You need to be able to express yourself well, communicate, and write. These are the only skills you need, nothing else is needed. Jobs are there, ready-made.
So how to be patent examiners of government?
That there are possible things. Now that's an interesting thing here. It takes over 6 years today to clear a patent in India because there are only 300 examiners in India. Okay? India files 46,000 patents last year, and only 16,000 patents have been analyzed because there are shortage of examiners, and so there is a lack of proper examiners, and these come as regular advertisements to apply for. This is like any other governmental jobs of the DBT and all that. Any other question?
We don't have further questions. Thank